If you watch the first part, you know how it started. A knock at 5 in the morning, a terrified neighbor telling me not to go to work, and a phone call from the police that changed everything. I thought the nightmare ended that day, but it didn't. It only began. That morning, my neighbor saved my life. By noon, he'd turned me into a fugitive. And by night, I realized the truth he was hiding was about my own family. My name is Liana Hart, and this is the part of the story I never wanted to tell. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and comment where you're watching from. It helps the story reach more people. 2 days later, I was hiding in a rundown motel at the edge of Route 16. The air smelled like wet carpet and fear. My phone was dead, the blinds were shut, and every car that passed made my heart stop. On the TV, my face was flashing across the news. They called me a traitor, accused me of leaking government research, but they were wrong. I wasn't the criminal. I was the experiment. Ethan Wells, my neighbor, the man who warned me, sat quietly at the edge of the bed. He looked exhausted, like someone who'd seen too much. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat. They won't stop, Liana. They're not chasing you to arrest you. They're chasing you to erase you. I didn't know what to say. Why me? What did I do? He turned the old laptop toward me. A single folder glowed on the cracked screen. Project Genesis. L. Hart. My chest tightened. That was my mother's project, the one she worked on before she disappeared 8 years ago. I whispered, "Where did you get this?" "Your father left it behind," Ethan said. "He tried to protect you, but your mother's work, it was never destroyed." My throat burned. I wanted to scream, to ask 100 questions, but before I could, a helicopter swept over the motel. The windows shook, and a bright white light filled the room. Ethan grabbed my arm. "Pack your things. Now. If they lock on this signal, we're done." My hands were shaking as I stuffed clothes into my bag. I caught my reflection in the mirror, pale, scared, and broken. I didn't recognize the girl staring back. I whispered to myself, "Mom, what did you do?" And in that second, I realized the truth wasn't behind me. It was waiting ahead, and it was coming fast. Ethan drove through the back roads in silence, his hands gripping the wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The rain had started again, hitting the windshield in fast, sharp drops. I sat beside him, staring out into the blur of headlights and shadows, trying to piece together what was happening. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face, faded memories from years ago, and that single folder on the laptop screen with my name on it. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. Why was my name on a government project? Why did my mother lie to me? We stopped at a small gas station just before dawn. Ethan filled the tank while I went inside to buy a bottle of water. The man behind the counter kept glancing at the TV hanging from the wall. My heart nearly stopped when I saw my own picture flash on the screen. The reporter called me a suspect in a national security leak, claiming I'd sold medical research to foreign buyers. My hands trembled so badly the bottle slipped from my fingers and rolled across the floor. Ethan grabbed my arm the second I stepped outside. "You shouldn't have gone in there," he said. "They've updated the alert. Your face is everywhere now." I snapped back. "You said you were helping me, but you're not telling me everything, are you? What do you know about my mother?" He stared at me for a long second before answering. "I can't tell you everything. Not yet. But you need to trust me, Liana. Your mother wasn't who you thought she was." Those words hit harder than anything else. My mother had been kind, patient, the kind of woman who tucked me in at night and left notes in my lunchbox. I refused to believe she was part of something dangerous. We drove again, heading toward the mountains. The farther we got from the city, the weaker my signal became. For a while, the silence felt safe, almost peaceful, until Ethan's burner phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, his face tightening. "We've been traced," he said quietly. Before I could react, headlights appeared behind us, 2 black SUVs speeding up fast. Ethan swerved off the main road and turned into a narrow forest trail. Branches scraped the car as we raced through the dark. My pulse thundered in my ears. I kept looking back, expecting gunfire, sirens, something, but the SUVs didn't follow. They stopped right where the dirt road began. as if they knew exactly where we were going. When we finally stopped, the car smelled like smoke and fear. Ethan got out and opened the trunk, pulling out a small metal box. "This belonged to your father," he said. "He told me if anything ever happened, I should give it to you." Inside was an old cassette tape and a folded piece of paper with coordinates written in my father's handwriting. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The paper had a single line written under the numbers, "For her eyes only." I looked up at Ethan. "You were working with my father?" He nodded. "We were both part of the security team protecting Project Genesis. Your mother wasn't just a scientist, Liana. She was the one who started it." I felt the ground drop beneath me. "You're lying." He shook his head. "Your father tried to shut it down when he realized what it was really for. She disappeared before he could stop her. You were part of her research. That's why they want you." The world seemed to tilt. I couldn't breathe. Everything I knew, every childhood memory, felt twisted and wrong. My mother hadn't vanished because she was a victim. She'd vanished because she was hiding what she'd done. I turned away from Ethan and started walking down the dirt path, needing space, air, something real. The rain had stopped, but the sky was heavy and gray. When I reached the edge of the trees, my phone buzzed for the first time in hours. One message flashed across the screen. "S7B, you missed a page." There was no name, no number, just that cryptic line. My stomach turned cold. Ethan caught up to me, saw the message, and his eyes went wide. "Who sent that?" "I don't know," I said. "What does S7B mean?" He didn't answer, which told me everything I needed to know. I grabbed the metal box from his hand. "You've been lying to me since the start," I said. "You knew my parents. You knew about this project, and you still brought me here. Why?" Ethan's voice broke. "Because your mother told me to find you. She said you were the only one who could finish what she started." I took a step back, the cassette still in my hand. My chest ached, but my voice stayed steady. "Then I guess it's time I find out what she really did." I turned away and started walking toward the coordinates written on the note, leaving Ethan standing in the mud behind me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't just running anymore. I was chasing the truth, and deep down, I could feel it. The real danger hadn't even started yet. The coordinates written on my father's note led deep into the mountains, far from any signal or light. I drove until the road vanished, and the forest swallowed the path. My fingers were stiff on the steering wheel, my mind replaying Ethan's words over and over. "You were part of her research. That's why they want you." The air grew colder as I walked. Branches cracked beneath my shoes, and the forest felt alive, watching me. Every shadow looked like a secret waiting to surface. The coordinates ended at an old chain-link fence wrapped in vines. Behind it stood a single concrete building, its windows boarded, its sign faded by time. Hart Biotechnical Research Facility. Restricted access. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. This place belonged to my family. My mother had worked here before she disappeared. I hesitated, staring at the rusted gate, knowing that once I stepped inside, there would be no turning back. The lock was broken. I pushed the gate open, its screech echoing through the trees. Inside, the hall smelled of chemicals and dust. Papers were scattered across the floor, and broken monitors hung from their wires like dead eyes. I used the flashlight on my phone, following old footprints that looked too recent to be forgotten. At the end of the hallway, a door stood half open. Inside was a small laboratory, metal tables, shattered glass, and the faint hum of a generator still alive after all these years. On the wall hung a photo of 3 people: my father, my mother, and a man I didn't recognize. All of them smiling. There was a terminal still, blinking in the corner. I wiped the dust off the keyboard and pressed a key. The screen came to life with a soft green glow and asked for a blood ID authorization. My name appeared automatically. L. Hart. Access pending. I stared at the prompt. Frozen. It wanted a DNA confirmation. My throat went dry. Slowly, I pricked my finger on a shard of glass and pressed the drop against the sensor pad. The screen flickered, then opened a hidden archive titled Genesis Phase 2. Videos loaded one by one, old lab recordings. My mother appeared on screen, her hair tied back, her voice calm but tired. Subject A7 shows full cellular recovery. Genetic stability achieved. We may have found a way to stop the decay sequence. Subject A7. I didn't want to believe it, but every word made my chest tighten. That was me. The next clip showed my father arguing with her. You can't keep testing on her, Margaret. She's our daughter, not a cure. My knees nearly gave out. My father had known. He had tried to stop her. My entire life. The tests, the hospital visits, the unexplained fevers. None of it had been coincidence. The screen flashed again, this time showing a message dated 1 week before my mother disappeared. Protocol transfer initiated to Vault C. If compromised, activate failsafe S7B. That code, the same one from the message I received earlier. Whoever texted me knew exactly what this was. I copied the coordinates from the file onto my phone and backed away from the terminal. Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the hallway. I killed the light and hid behind a table. The door creaked open. Ethan's voice called softly, "Liana, it's me, don't panic." I stayed silent, clutching the phone in my hand. He walked into the lab, his flashlight sweeping across the room. His eyes landed on the glowing monitor. "You opened it," he said quietly. "You shouldn't have." I stepped out, anger shaking in my voice. "You knew this was here. You knew who I was." He looked at me with something close to guilt. "I didn't know everything. I only knew your mother was alive. She wanted you to find the truth when it was safe." "Safe?" I said. "Nothing about this is safe. She used me, Ethan. My entire life was an experiment." He took a slow step closer. "Liana, listen. Your mother didn't make you a weapon. She made you immune. The virus they were building, someone turned it into something deadly. She saved you because your blood is the only cure." The world seemed to blur. My legs felt weak, my pulse loud in my ears. "Then why are they hunting me?" "Because curing it would expose what they did," he said, "and that would ruin everything they built." Outside, a low rumble shook the ground. I looked through the window and saw black SUVs pulling up to the fence line. Red lights blinked through the trees. Ethan turned to me. "We don't have time. You have to go. There's a second vault under this facility, Vault C. That's where your mother hid the original samples. If you can reach it before they do, you'll have proof." I backed away, shaking my head. "What about you?" "I'll slow them down," he said. "It's the only way." Before I could argue, he pressed a small drive into my hand. "If I don't make it, give this to no one but her. You'll understand when you see her." My breath caught. "Her? You mean my mother?" He nodded once. Then he pulled his gun, turned toward the hallway, and whispered, "Run." I ran through the back exit, the sound of shattering glass and gunfire behind me. The forest swallowed me again, but this time I wasn't running blindly. I had a destination, a purpose. The rain poured harder as I reached a narrow ridge overlooking the valley. I stopped, soaked and trembling, clutching the drive. Lightning flashed across the sky, lighting up the facility far below. For a brief moment, I saw Ethan still standing at the doorway, holding off the agents. Then the explosion ripped through the trees. I screamed his name, but the wind carried it away. When the smoke cleared, I turned toward the direction of Vault C. My mother's secrets had taken everything from me, but I wasn't done. I was going to finish what she started, on my own terms. And for the first time since this began, I wasn't just running from the truth. I was walking straight into it. The blast from the facility shook the ground beneath my feet. A wave of heat rolled through the forest, followed by the sound of cracking trees and falling metal. I stumbled, clutching the small drive Ethan had given me. The air smelled like smoke and rain. My ears rang, but I could still hear the echo of gunfire fading behind me. I wanted to run back, to make sure he was alive, but the firelight rising over the trees told me it was too late. Ethan was gone. I forced myself to keep moving. The coordinates from the file pointed to a valley half a mile away, hidden beneath a collapsed bridge. The path was steep, muddy, and slippery. I fell more than once, my clothes torn, my palms bleeding, but the thought of stopping never crossed my mind. Ethan had died for this. My parents had lived and lied for this. Whatever waited for me at the end of those coordinates, I had to face it, When I finally reached the bottom, I saw a metal door built into the rock, half buried under moss and vines. It looked like a bunker. The keypad beside it was dead, but the small blood sensor beside it glowed faintly in the dark. I took a deep breath, pressed my finger to it, and waited. The scanner blinked red, then green, and the door slid open with a long metallic groan. Inside was pure silence. The air was heavy and cold, untouched for years. The hallway was narrow, lined with flickering lights that turned on one by one as I walked. At the end stood a glass chamber filled with dim blue light. My heart pounded as I stepped closer and saw her, my mother. She was standing inside the chamber, older, thinner, her hair streaked with gray, but alive. When she turned, her eyes met mine through the glass, and for a moment, the world stopped. Every question, every sleepless night, every scream inside my chest suddenly had a face. The door to the chamber hissed open. She stepped out slowly, her voice soft but calm. "I knew you'd come, Liana." I couldn't speak. I didn't know whether to hug her or hit her. All I managed was a broken whisper. "You're alive." She nodded. I had to be. They would have destroyed everything if I hadn't gone underground. My throat tightened. They destroyed everything anyway. Dad's dead. Ethan's gone. And you turned me into something I don't even understand. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't turn you into anything. I saved you. You were dying, Liana. Your immune system was collapsing. The program was supposed to find a cure for genetic decay. You were the only one who survived the treatment." I shook my head. "You experimented on me." She stepped closer, her hands trembling. "I gave you a chance to live. I didn't know what they would do after. They stole my research, weaponized it, and called it Genesis. They wanted to create immunity through synthetic bloodlines, but they failed. The only working model was you." I felt sick. "So that's why they're hunting me, because I'm proof of what you did." "No," she said, voice breaking, "because your blood can undo what they've built. The virus they released to control populations, the one they blamed on foreign labs, it can be neutralized by your DNA. That's why they want you erased." For a long time, I couldn't breathe. All the pieces finally connected. The research, the lies, the folder with my name, the warning Ethan gave me. The truth wasn't that my mother was a monster. The truth was that she had created something powerful enough to expose an entire network of corruption, and I was carrying it inside me. She reached for the drive in my hand. "Ethan gave you this, didn't he?" I nodded. "He said it was for you." She took it and placed it into a nearby console. The screen lit up, displaying data streams and video logs. My father's voice filled the room. "If you're hearing this, it means I failed to stop them. Margaret, you have to finish it. Use the code I left in the sample log. Activate the release." My mother typed quickly, her hands steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "Your father knew this day would come," she said. "The moment we release this, the truth goes public. Every file, every experiment, every name." The console asked for one final authorization. "L. Hart, confirm DNA sequence for upload." She looked at me. "It has to be you." I hesitated. "If I do this, they'll come after me. I'll never have a normal life." She gave a sad smile. "You never did." I stepped forward and pressed my hand to the scanner. The console scanned my blood, verified the sequence, and began the upload. A progress bar appeared. 1%, 2%, 3%. My mother stood beside me, watching as the data transferred to every public network on the planet. When it reached 100%, the alarms started. Red lights flashed across the chamber. On a nearby screen, I saw encrypted feeds going live. News channels, classified documents, secret communications, all pouring out into the open. The truth was finally out. My mother turned to me, tears in her eyes. "It's done. They can't hide anymore." I smiled through my fear. Then maybe Ethan didn't die for nothing. But before I could say another word, a sharp sound cut through the air. A gunshot. My mother's body jerked, and she fell into my arms. The glass behind us shattered. Agents had breached the facility. I screamed and dragged her behind the console. Blood stained my hands, but she was still breathing, barely. She pressed a small metal capsule into my palm and whispered, "Run. Keep it safe. It's the original strain. If they destroy everything else, this will be proof." Her hand went limp. I turned toward the doorway, my chest burning with grief and rage. The agents were shouting orders, closing in. I slipped the capsule into my pocket and sprinted down the opposite corridor. My heart pounded as gunfire echoed behind me, sparks flying off the walls. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I knew what I was running from and what I was carrying. When I burst through the exit tunnel, the first light of dawn was breaking across the horizon. The storm had cleared, but the war was just beginning. For the first time, I wasn't afraid, because now the whole world knew the truth. By the time the sun rose completely, the forest was silent again. Smoke from the explosion drifted above the trees like a warning sign. My hands were covered in dirt and dried blood, but I didn't stop walking. Every step forward felt heavier, like I was carrying more than just a secret. I was carrying the proof of everything my mother had fought and died for. When I finally reached the highway, my legs gave out. I sat down by the roadside, the cold asphalt burning against my skin. Cars sped past, drivers glancing but never stopping. To them, I was just another stranger. They didn't know the war that had just been fought beneath their feet. I pulled out the small metal capsule my mother had given me before she died. It was no bigger than my thumb, sealed tight, with her initials carved faintly on the side. Inside it was the original virus strain, the one capable of exposing every crime they had buried. I turned it over in my hand, trying to decide what to do next. The upload she started had already gone public. The data was everywhere now, impossible to erase. But the capsule was physical proof, something real, something they would still kill to find. For hours I walked aimlessly, passing gas stations and abandoned houses. Every now and then, a siren sounded in the distance. My body ached, but my mind was sharper than it had ever been. I kept replaying the look on my mother's face, the way she smiled at the end, even as the light faded from her eyes. She had spent her life protecting me, not from danger, but from the truth. By noon, the world had already changed. Billboards flashed breaking news. Government experiment exposed. Secret biogenetic program leaked. Reporters shouted questions on every channel, while officials denied everything. They were losing control of their own lives. People wanted answers. And for the first time, they weren't looking at me as the villain. They were looking at the people who made me one. I found shelter in an old farmhouse on the edge of town. It was empty, dust on every surface, a radio humming in the kitchen. I turned it on. A calm female reporter was reading a list of names: scientists, politicians, corporate executives, people connected to Project Genesis. Each name was followed by words like arrested, under investigation, or missing. Then I heard one name that made me freeze: Ethan Wells. The reporter said his body hadn't been found. I felt a sharp sting of hope, a foolish little spark that maybe, somehow, he was still alive. I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe it. I spent that night in the farmhouse, sitting by the window and watching the news unfold. Protests had started in several cities. People were demanding the truth, carrying signs that said, "We deserve answers," and no more lies. The files my mother and I released had shaken the entire system. But even as the world woke up, I knew it wasn't over. The men who created Genesis wouldn't disappear quietly. They would rebuild, rename, and start again. That's what people like them always did. I opened my father's old note one more time, reading the line he'd written under the coordinates. For her eyes only. I finally understood what he meant. It wasn't just about finding the truth. It was about seeing it clearly, even when it hurts. In that quiet farmhouse, I made a decision. I wasn't going to run anymore. I would keep the capsule hidden, somewhere no one could reach it, until the world was ready to handle what it contained. I would spend the rest of my life making sure the truth stayed alive, not as a fugitive, not as a weapon, but as a survivor. A week later, I watched the sunrise from a small diner off the coast. My hair was shorter now, my clothes different, but my eyes felt older. The waitress poured me coffee and smiled, not recognizing me. On the television behind her, a reporter mentioned new safety laws being written, investigations expanding. People were finally asking the right questions. I slipped the capsule into my jacket pocket and paid for my meal. Outside, the world looked calm again. Cars on the road, people laughing, waves crashing against the shore. For everyone else, life had gone back to normal. For me, it never would, but that was okay. As I walked down the empty street, I whispered a promise to myself: no more running, no more hiding. Somewhere out there, Ethan might still be alive. Somewhere, the people behind Genesis were watching, waiting for the right moment to rise again. And somewhere, my mother's legacy, the cure she created through me, was changing lives. I didn't know where this path would lead, but for the first time, I felt peace. My life had started with fear, but it wouldn't end that way. I was ready to face whatever came next. And if anyone ever tries to rewrite this story, I'll be there to remind them. The truth doesn't die, it adapts. So if you've been with me through this journey, thank you. And if you want to know what happens next, what I'll do with the proof, and what's coming for the ones still in the shadows, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support means more than you think, because this story isn't over. It never was. The world knows my name now, and I'm not hiding anymore.